Okay. Okay, kia ora tato. It's great to be invited to be part of this forum. Daniil and I were over in Sydney a few years ago now, before Mark started working, and they started working on the Czech project. So it's great to be invited back. Ko Fiona Togo Ingoa. So as Mark said, I'm Fiona, and I've been working with Daniil over the past 15 years. So what we're going to cover in this presentation is we're going to start with the Whakatauki, which is our Māori proverb, and we hope that kind of sets the scene of what we hope that you get out of our presentation. We're going to look at the timeline of the service and an overview of the team, some key developments over the 15 years and their activity over time, and our thoughts about what works, and definitely some synergies there with what Alex has just been saying. And then we'll sum up. So the Whakatauki is no te ruru, naku te ruru ka ora e te iwi. So with your food basket and my food basket, the people will thrive. So we hope by sharing our knowledge and you sharing your knowledge in the room and everyone online, that we all move forward and the project moves forward with a lot of strength and energy behind it. And at this point, Daniil and I would just like to acknowledge Māori elders, past, present, and emerging, and any Aboriginal elders, past, present, and emerging, and of course, any Aboriginal participants in the room. Kia ora. So this service started with a research project back in 2006. Myself, Eileen McKinley, and Donna Cormack undertook a qualitative exploration of how people on the coast experienced their journeys with various types of cancer. And what we found was that although the cancer was stressful, they got a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty about not being able to navigate the system, which on the West Coast at the time very much straddled the West Coast and the Southern Alps over to Christchurch. And so based on the findings from the study, we were able to secure some funding to pilot a service for people living with cancer. And that pilot lasted for 3 years, and it was independently evaluated by Health Outcomes International, who found that there was real value in the Navigator service. So the West Coast PHO thought, well, if the navigators can bring so much relief and demystify the system for people living with cancer, what about those with diabetes, COPD, and heart disease? And so since 2010, the service has actually been evolving. And in fact, now Daniil and the team also have many clients referred to them who are experiencing mental illness, as well as other long-term conditions and social complexity. And so now I'm going to hand you over to Daniil.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Daniil aho. Welcome everybody, it's great to be back talking to you again. 80% of this Navigator team are the original team that started way back in 2007. And Fiona will propose some reasons why a bit later on. Of the team that are left, Adam had a history as a consumer of cancer services, and he came to us post a bone marrow transplant. Nan is Māori. She whakapapas back to Tūhoe, which is a North Island iwi, but currently has been on the coast for 25 years. She came to us as an administration assistant in a fledgling Māori health organisation. I myself worked for the Cancer Society for 10 years as the manager of their West Coast services prior to coming onto this project. We also have two who we call newbie navigators who live and work in the Westport area. And both of those women have come from a community background. You can see by the map that we have here that the West Coast is a fine strip of land bordered by the Tasman Sea and the Southern Alps. It's about 500 kilometres from Karamea in the north to Haast in the south. It's about the same distance as Auckland to Wellington. It's sparsely populated. There's only about just over 30,000 people live on the coast. These points highlight the key developments in terms of the service over the last 12 years. I'll talk to point 2 more when we look at how COVID impacted the service. But for now, I want to focus on our role related to the bowel screening program. The navigators here are community-based and they're well known for their can-do attitude. And because of this, last year we were offered a contract to do bowel screening outreach for the local DHB and the bowel screening program. So for this, we basically went out to find and engage with people who had recently received information and a kit from bowel screening but hadn't returned it. For us, we decided to do it as a face-to-face, and so we went out using all the technology we could and found the people. We conversed with them. We tried to engage them into participating in the bowel screening program, and also engaging in their health. And if they had any issues, we tried to sort them out. We're also able to gather a lot of information about them and provide that back to the private practices as appropriate. So, you know, change of address and change of phone number, that was very valuable. And in the last quarter, we've had a report to say that 82% of the people that we've contacted have completed their tests. So really well worth doing. So this slide is about the impact of COVID. So whilst the activity that we undertook during COVID is largely ceased now, the impact on how the service interacted with other services, but especially around secondary care, has been slow to resume. We had to be kind of almost quick smart and decide what we were going to do when we went into lockdown, which happened quite quickly here. One of the biggest roles we had is that the pharmacies are part of the primary care organisation. So for them and us, we delivered their medication to all the vulnerable clients, and there were just boxes full of it. But we did this only when the lockdown was on, and then they resumed business as normal. Adam, one of our navigators who we thought was health compromised, we actually engaged him in making health calls to people and just checking in on everyone, and he made hundreds and hundreds of calls during that time.
Okay, so now I just thought it'd be useful to look at the activity of the navigators over time. Their FTE has increased modestly from 3.8 FTE to 4.1. But as you can see, the number of clients, current or new referrals, has remained relatively consistent over the period, as has the percentage of Māori who are part of the programme. And Māori actually make up 11% of the population on the coast. So the team is actually engaging well with Māori. Their activity has changed slightly over the time. They're now doing more phone calls and more face-to-face meetings. And this may reflect actually the complexity of the clients that are being referred to them. However, they're having slightly less engagement with other agencies, and this probably reflects their knowledge and an increased understanding of what the various agencies on the West Coast offer and can offer their clients. So what we think works in retaining our navigators, and as Daniil said, 80% of the team are the same as the ones that started in 2007, is actually offering them ongoing training. And Alex talked to this as well. So I guess in terms of our training, it's kind of been more organic as to what they identified would be useful for them over time. And as you can see, they've even undertaken some training based in Australia at the University of Tasmania. So open to training in a variety of areas. And the other thing that Alex talked about was the importance of selection of the navigators. And I 100% agree with Alex. We chose navigators that weren't just rural, but rural and off the coast. And this is really important. So Daniil and Adam are generational West Coasters, and they're going to stay, and we know they're going to stay. Nan, as Daniil said, whakapapas to Tuhoe on the North Island, but married a West Coaster, and so is very much going to stay on the coast. So selection is really important. The other thing I will say is the one navigator that has moved on to work in Westport and another area, I think it's good that I don't think it's a disadvantage that we inputted all this training into that person, because when she talks to other people in the community about working for the PHO, she will convey it in a positive light and talk about all the support that she had and received when she worked there. So now I'm going to hand you back to Daniil, who's going to talk to you and give you a little backstory about some of the people that the team have worked with.
This is just a small snapshot from our album of people that we work with, predominantly elderly. They live in a low socioeconomic area, which is most of the West Coast. Most of the people that we work with are single, so they have brittle family supports. The guy with Adam, he had severe COPD as one of his long-term conditions, and getting out of the house to appointments was troublesome for him. But we actually found out that one of the biggest anxieties of him leaving the house was that although he did have a ramp, it was hard for him to get down it, because here we have a really high rainfall and it was quite slippery with a bit of moss. So we engaged the local corrections department, and they came out with a team of guys and a water blaster, and they water blasted the ramp, and so it was much safer for him to exit the house. The two people that I'm in the photo with, they, along with their other long-term conditions, had dementias. And I think for me, one of the biggest assistance that we were able to give them was we were able to re-engage them with their wider family, so that when decisions regarding their care had to be made, there were enduring power of attorneys put in place so that they could safely transition from their own homes into care. On the bottom right, the bottom left for you is Nan, with a gentleman that came to us with low literacy levels, and we find a lot of people have low literacy levels on the West Coast. And he was making an application for accident compensation, which he had been dealing with them for many years. And he did say he had a bit of paperwork, but when he came in, he actually had a banana box full of paperwork, which we had to muddle through and sought out, and actually was quite successful with his application. And we do see him from time to time, but he just keeps generally on with his life now. On the bottom right-hand side, we have a gentleman who had alcohol dependence syndrome, as well as an asthma and gout. He, like many Māori in New Zealand, disenfranchised from his whānau and his iwi. He was actually from the North Island iwi. Towards the end of his life, he was brought into the hospital, which we assisted with, because he wasn't safe in the community. So we set about trying to find for him his whānau in the North Island. And at the time, Skype on the phone was relatively new, so we had it loaded on our phones, and we used all sorts of social media and any resource we had to track down his whānau in the North Island. And this is actually a photo of him speaking to his brother, who he hadn't spoken to for 35 years. And the really great thing about this was that 2 days later, the whānau arrived in a van, and they were able to spend the last couple of days with him and repatriate him after his death to whānau in the North Island. It's a very special time.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to meet Brian. And Brian, as a relatively young man who he might not look it, was referred to the Navigator service, and he just recently had a stroke. And the Navigator team worked with 16 different agencies for Brian. So that included the general practitioner, the dentist, the police, and the judiciary. So we're just going to show you this short video. I'm hoping it's going to work, and you're going to meet Brian.
My name's Adam Gilston. I'm a health navigator with the West Coast Primary Health Organisation in Greymouth. Brian's had a stroke and he's unable to drive. If we help out and try and make things a little easier for him until he gets himself back on track. He lives in a bus, obviously down this track, which is just out of Kamara. It's quite isolated. He was struggling a lot, wasn't getting to appointments. I think a few places may have given up on him. But, you know, we've helped him with some basic coping strategies. And he was getting very forgetful. So we just come up with an idea, this basic idea of having a whiteboard so he could write the list of appointments he has for the day. And we've helped him to program his cell phone so he knows he gets a reminder in the morning as well.
Hey, buddy. Hey, good to see you. What have you got on? But I think I got speech therapy and pick up some medication, I think. Come in. This is me whiteboard that I have sitting down there, and basically that's a bit of a saviour. Without that, I'll be with the brain bleed that I've had. It impairs your speech and your ability to plan things. If it hadn't been for the help of the guys out there, you know, the navigators, I'll tell you what. Well, I don't know what I would have done, you know. Right, square away.
Run out right at the hospital, mate. Pick up and about now.
Yep. Yeah, okay. So it's 12 o'clock.
Good.
I'm really happy with my progress. So the help that the navigators have gave me, it's been just immense. Oh.
Hi, Brian.
How's it going?
I'm Denise, speech language therapist. The reason we referred Brian to the Health Navigator system was because it became apparent in working with him that he wasn't able to get himself organised. It's really good to know that you've got a service on the other end that's responsive and is on the same wavelength and has got the same patient focus.
It makes my job worthwhile when you get results like what we see with Brian at the moment. He's really surged forward since we first met him. He's a lot more confident about things, and he's feeling better about himself. So, you know, it's a great feeling that we've been able to help him that way.
I must say, life's get it now. Yeah.
So over the years, there remains some continuing barriers and challenges for the team. The secondary healthcare professionals have a tendency to be more dismissive of the skills and knowledge of the navigators. And this is probably due to two factors. There's quite a high turnover at Grey Base Hospital of staff, as there are in many rural areas. And also there's a new hospital being built. So the old hospital has been demolished, and the layout of the new hospital has kind of had an impact of how the team interacts. So it's going to take time for them to reestablish those relationships. The other issue is the distance. As Daniil said, it's 500 kilometres from Karamea to Haast. There are a lot of climate change impacts, and the topography of the land impacts on the equity of the service. So essentially, there's one main road across the west coast from Karamea to Haast, and it's really prone to washouts and landslips, so impacting on how the navigators can reach those that are referred to them. And finally, the capacity to address the referrals just due to the volume and increasing complexity. And this is and will be an ongoing challenge as the population ages, and being a rural area, the population is older than the urban areas in New Zealand. So in summing up, rural recruitment and retention of healthcare workers, as we know, is challenging. Yet here is a team in rural that is still in place 15 years later. And I come back to the fact that the navigator team is off and from the coast. And also there has been support for them to extend their skills and training, meaning that they have that constant stimulation and they know they're valued by the organisation they work with. The service is recognised as contributing to improving the health and social care experiences of the clients they work with. And over time, the expanded skill set that they have and knowledge means that they become even more competent in supporting those referred to the service. Furthermore, they continue to relieve the pressure on the regulated healthcare workforce. So that is us, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back to the main room.
Well, thanks very much, Fiona and Danielle. I'm not sure whether they can hear us online yet.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mark, and I can see
Okay.
there's a question.
Probably got time for just one question in the room. No? What about online? I noticed there was some people asked a question. One person.
Mark, we've got one question online from Sydney. So, how did COVID impact the health navigators' ability to connect with the community? So, Danielle, Fiona, do you want to give some feedback on that?
Daniil, over to you.
Sorry?
We've got no sound in the room.
How did COVID impact your ability to connect with the community?
We just check whether we're going to have sound again.
Our tech team is on it.
Switching backwards and forwards between online is a bit challenging for us. Okay, so Fiona, do you want to try and answer that, or Danielle?
Daniil's going to answer that.
You can just faintly.
It was really challenging. It really kind of, because we all moved away from the office and we worked from home, that was a challenge in itself, but we were able to operate. So for the people that needed to be taken somewhere, we gowned up and we actually took them to appointments. But we spent a lot of time delivering RATS tests to people and just, just checking in. So we actually saw probably more people in that time than generally we would see from our client cohort that we see normally on a day-to-day basis. It was difficult for everyone. It was extremely difficult for older vulnerable people here. And I'm not sure that people will actually, elderly people will recover really from this. The isolation that it's caused, it just stopped them in their tracks. Whose Nan was a district